I will start by saying that I support the state of Israel and I love the state of Israel. And until this moment, I have been saying to all my friends, we love the state of Israel. We want to support them. We do want rights for Palestinians. We do want a two-state solution, just like you say, all the Americans say, because I'm a good lefty. Here is what my struggle is right now. Not with you. I'm listening. I'm trying to keep an open mind. My struggle is, so I heard, you know who Moshe Halbertam is? A good Israeli lefty. Yes. So I heard him speak. I attended a learning weekend at the end of October. And he said all these wonderful things about how, for people who don't know, he wrote the Code of Ethics for the IDF. He's a very eminent legal scholar out of Israel, and he also travels around the world.
And a very nice man.
A sweetheart, a total sweetheart. So he said in our many discussions, and it was a very crowded room, so it wasn't just me, he said that, you know, the IDF was doing all this extra effort to minimize civilian casualties. I've been telling people that, right? Because I'm trying to carry the message to the left wing. Like, no, you really need to understand the history. It's not apartheid. It's not colonialism. It's not genocide. It's something else. It's a national conflict. It's a war. It's a war that has gone up and down for many, many years, but it's a war. And I guess my biggest struggle right now is that people are watching these videos of these children dying, and they're saying it's genocide. And they're contacting me because I'm like their only Jew, and they're like, it's genocide. It's genocide. Say what you want, but it's genocide. Is that the goal?
I wanted to respond to your question. You're a lefty. You have a lot of lefty friends, and you're asking him for answers to go back and deliver. And so he attempted to give you some facts and some context and some data that you can study, pointers that you can start with. And obviously, there's a lot of reading material, and there's data out there that we're going to have to study to be able to respond to. And you're adding about, as we know, let me finish, please. The professors at Yale Law School are very intelligent. There are people at the Yale Law School that teach law and can add. I mean, so people are special. They specialize in certain. Excuse me. Yeah, they can't add. They're not very good at math, or they can't get their car to the parking lot. So my point is, as Toby would say. So my point is, and because I want to respond to you, I don't know if you know as many lefties as I know. I bet you I know more than them, and I have more lefty friends. But it doesn't help. But here's what does help. What does help is a little bit of a reality check, which is I think what we're getting here tonight, and we're getting after October 7th, which is that there are two types of people. There are people that you can deliver facts to, and will open-mindedly, intelligently, and intellectually, and rationally, and objectively look at them, and then change their mind about their accusations and their allegations or their perceptions. And then there are some people who will look at the same facts and still not change their mind because of their biases. Unfortunately, we're living in a world, as you alluded to, where I've got some news for you, which is you call them friends, but they may not actually be your friends. They may not be your friends. Or they may have been your friends and are no longer your friends. And it's a very difficult thing because, as you say, we live in a world where people don't like war. We live in La La Land to some extent in this country because things have been fairly good. Jews have had it pretty good for a couple of decades. And the world is changing, or the world has changed dramatically. And so we're going to have to decide who our friends are, how we define what a friend is, and the extent to which people today fall into one of those two categories. You're either going to be an intelligent thinking person and look at all the answers that Israel will give, that international lawyers at West Point will give you, that the videos will give you, and you look at them and it's pretty damn blatant about what happened on October 7th and what we're dealing with. And some of them will accept and some of them won't. I want to go back to Moshe Habertal. Moshe Habertal, by the way, is a great scholar and a great friend of mine and a great friend of Shabtai. And he actually was brought into by the dean of the Yale Law School, Robert Post, when we went to Robert Post to tell him that we were going to host the second prosecutor of Israel for war crimes after the Gaza war. The first one was Richard Goldstone, who, thank God, saw the light and retracted his first allegations to prosecutors for war crimes. The second was a fellow by the name of William Shabas, who is an academic, one of those kind of, what we call tier 3 La La Land academics, they have some law degree from somewhere. They don't get a job at a law school, so they end up at the UN. And he was the person who was, and actually a very fine man and a very nice man, not very intelligent, not very objective. And he was appointed by the United Nations, not this round, which is going to happen tomorrow, or this last round at the IGC, same thing, UN, but to allege for war crimes for Israel and to essentially convict the Jews for defending our people. So I said, well, let's bring him to Yale's campus and let's hear what he has to say. So I went to Robert Post and I said, Robert, what do we do? And he said, Moshe would be fantastic. Let's talk about asymmetrical warfare. Let's do it on the Shell Human Rights Center. Let's have a big debate. Let's keep it off the record. Let's not let the press come in. We'll just have the law school there. And so we kind of coordinated the event. They got up. And Moshe's polished. He knows the stuff. He wrote the Code of Ethics for the IDF. He wrote my book of Maimonides, by the way, a biography you should all read. Teaches at NYU and at the Yale Law School, just to reference him. For those of you who don't yet know him, you should know his work and know his intelligence and his brilliance. And so they got up at the law school, 127, and they did a talk about asymmetrical warfare, phosphorus, and everything that the Israelis did at the second. And then we went for dinner. We went over to my, I said, well, Shabbos, you're prosecuting the Jews. Why don't you come over to my house? Come over to my house for dinner. Toby now made dinner. We had a couple of professors come over. There was one professor I remember who actually came. He was studying bestiality, which I just thought was interesting at Yale. I don't know how it ended up. Yeah. No, there was no for or against. It was, we don't have for or against. It was, we're going to have dinner. So we made a big roast. We brought out the bourbon. And here's the point. So we sat at our house after a long lecture at the law school, and there were about 5 professors and 5 students, and William Shabbos and Moshe Habertal. But I put a pilot of the Israeli Defense Forces, who was at the law school at the time, across the table from William Shabbos, who had flown missions over Gaza during the Second Gaza War. He's now an attorney in Tel Aviv. And I said, good luck. I'm going to drink. Let's go. So we sat down and we had a dinner. The dinner lasted a few hours. But the conversation was William Shabbos and the guy in the cockpit. And the guy in the cockpit told him what he does and what the squadron commanders and pilots do when they fly over Gaza, and what they do when they see a child, and what they do when they see a playground, and what they do when they see a school, and what they do when they see a mosque. And he gave it to him straight. This is protocol. This is what we do. And he had a long conversation with William Shabbos. Now, then we had another lecture, and William Shabbos did a fantastic job. I know being recorded. We became somewhat friends because he did a fantastic job the next day explaining to Yale students that the 1948 document on human rights was actually written by 2 Jews who survived the Holocaust. And I won't get into, one was the architect of genocide, and one was the architect of crimes against humanity. And he was talking about, we Jews, and his father's Jewish, and he said, we Jews have to really remember that the Jews started this whole human rights thing, and he didn't go back as far as we do to the Bible, but, like I said, he's a mediocre professor, so he didn't do all the research, but he was good enough to tell them that the Jews we architected human rights in the modern era, in the middle of the 20th century. And so it was a great lecture, and he did a great job, and we Facebooked and we think. And here's the end of the story. The end of the story is that after all the lectures, and after all the conversations, and all the dinners, and all the facts that he was presented, he resigned. Because it turned out he was working for the Palestinian Authority. He was on the take. William Shabbos. Okay? That's the end of the story. So you think they're your friends. You can do so much. And then you got to lose some friends. It's expensive, but in the long term, it's probably a good idea. And those of us on the right side of history are going to survive. Those of us committed to truth know the truth. Evidenced by the event last night on campus, 140 students packed into a room. It would have been 500 if we had more room in the building. It would have been 1,000. Civil discourse like this, lefties, righties, international Jewish, non-Jewish, men, women, gays, everybody was represented at this event. 5 hours of this on campus on a midweek night. People are busy on campus at Yale. They came in at 7 o'clock. They didn't leave till midnight. 15 protesters outside, secular, leftist, radical, I would say Israelis, and only radical because I said, please don't demonstrate, come inside and join the discussion. 2 of them were bold enough to take a consensus of what the question would be from the group, wrote it down, and said, we're crossing the line, moved the barricade and said, I'm going to join. One from the med school. The other, I believe, is doing a postdoc in some field. These are intelligent people. And they joined, didn't scream, didn't raise their voice. And the event went on for 5 hours. And Simcha did a genius job at just talking about the facts, which is what we give Yaleys. We give Yaleys facts. And the left came up, and the right came up, and the students were debating for 2 hours. And there were people there who thought he should resign and thought that the right-wing government was responsible for the war and the failures of the Israeli government and the people. But the civil discourse was so good, nobody wanted to leave the room. Nobody screamed. Nobody walked out. I said, we've restored civil discourse. Let's do more and more and more of it. The intelligent people will sit and listen to the facts, not only at Yale, but hopefully in your offices, wherever you work, hopefully in your homes and on your Facebook pages. And then there are some people out there that don't want to know, and they simply cannot tolerate a lot of things, including what we're dealing with, which is the survival of the Jewish people. So I think we have to just know where we are in history, and we know that truth is always on our side. That's who we are. Jews and non-Jews who love the truth, love justice, really believe in human rights, really believe truly in what David talked about tonight in the open, and Toby talked about, the Nachshon ben Aminadav, and to move forward and to allow the Jewish people to flourish. And as Simcha said last night, it's not easy to keep a democracy going in a neighborhood where there are no democracies. The average Yale sophomore understands what that means. You don't have to be a genius to look at the map of the Middle East and look at the civilizations and the barbaric world that the Middle East is. The Islamic world is a very, very dark place, and even the moderate ones. Have we heard the woman of the Islamic world come out and condemn rape? Have we heard the leaders of the Islamic world in this country condemn October 7th? Have we seen the leaders of these countries come out and proclaim the travesty that has evolved from their civilization? It's absolutely silent. So there's never been a more open, clear, evident moment of clarity, morality that you spoke about last night. And I think if anyone thought that what we're talking about tonight was in some way extreme or radical, I'd say in New York, people would still sit around because you're kind of away from the utopian world. But I tell you, on campus, where people can still theorize and philosophize and hypothesize about things that really make no sense, because that's what you do. You experiment at Yale. Experiment sexually, you experiment intellectually, scientifically, mathematically. I don't have to tell you what happens in school. That's what we do on a college campus. And for none of those people to assume for one moment, not one person walked out. And it was this that you heard tonight for only an hour. It was 3 hours of it. It was a wonderful moment of clarity that we have a lot of work to do. Every one of us, we have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. And we're going to, it's not easy to sell the truth. It's not easy to a world of lies and a world that lives on TikTok and flash 10-second. We're living in a world with so much information, like you say, maybe too much. So what is the role of the Jewish people? What is the role of people that align with what the Jews stand for? What is the role of a democratic civilization? What is the role of the American in the world? Our role is to make the world a better place. Well, to make the world a better place is not to say, hey, I go to a Jello party at a Hillel house and I believe in Tikkun Olam. It means you got to go back and figure out, how much of this evidence you're going to gather and spend the time. We have to do the reading, and we have to go back to the origins of why there is a Jewish homeland in this Jewish state. It has nothing to do with the United Nations. It has to do with the fact that God gave us the land of Israel because we're the Jewish people, and it's our chosen land. If the world doesn't like it, the world can go to hell. It's a tiny little piece of land for 15 million people. They can frankly just go to hell. Now, it's not so simple to shut down The Hague and the UN. But you know what? Maybe we'll start at Yale. Maybe we'll put The Hague on trial. Maybe we'll put the UN on trial. Maybe for once we're going to stand up and tell the whole world. And I think about this. You're going to put the whole world on trial? Yeah. You know what? It's been done before. His name was Abraham. He was a Jew. And he lived in a world in the desert with pagans and cannibals. And we're here today, thousands of years later. Look at this man. Came here for a week, nonstop, meeting after meeting, hour after hour, Lior, nonstop, bodyguards, for nothing, because he loves us, because he's protecting us, Because the former dean of the Yale Law School said to him yesterday, you are our parents. Robert Post, the same guy who said, let's get Shabbos up with Moshe Habertal. He said to Simcha yesterday, in my house, privately, we look at Israel like our parents. You have to stay safe, and you have to follow the law. And he's somebody who he's not a right winger. He's not in the center. Robert Post is a liberal Democrat, unbelievable Jew, but he lives in the world of the intellectual elite of academia. And I said, keep us safe and follow the law. Who wants to keep Jews safe and follow the law more than Simcha Rothman and his party and the people of the judicial system and the Supreme Court and the independence of what Israel stands for? Nobody. So all we need to do now is figure out how to tweak it so that everybody's kind of in a consensus of how to do it. It's not always easy to do that. So Abraham stood up to an entire world as one person, and we're here in Manhattan on the 26th floor of a high-rise that was probably built by a Jew. The architect was probably a Jew. The lawyer was probably a Jew. Okay, let's just face it. And the guy who runs the office is here. And thank God we live in a wonderful country, the United States of America, that believes in freedom. But it's 200 years old, and we're 3,500 years old. So we're not going to be preached to or lectured to by The Hague or by the United Nations. Look at the countries on the list. I mean, if your friend can't look at those countries on a list who make up some of these organizations and say those are appalling. If your friend's a female, let's ask her if she would live in any of those countries. Ask her if she would walk around in a sleeveless shirt in any of those countries. Ask her if she would want her children to grow up in any of those countries. So it's nonsense. Our issue is that we just haven't come to terms with this moment. So but October 7th, I hope we don't need anything after October 7th for us to understand this is the moment. We've seen it. My children, I own a gun. I've lived in this country for 6 generations. My grandparents came here in 1885. I go to a range to learn how to shoot. If I told my great-grandfather, whose father was murdered in the early 20th century, that his great-grandson would own a gun, he would never believe it. Now, I'm not afraid. I'm not worried. I have no anxiety. I'm not depressed. I sleep well. I'm active. We're active. We're here because we're active. Look at us. We all came out. Downtown. We moved upside, upper west side, lower downside. We don't even know each other. Some of us are alumni friends. We kind of know each other, know somebody. We came out tonight. Why did we come out? We came to hear from, like David said, the radical. He's not such a radical. I tell you right now, our problem as an organization, this is only 3 days, that we don't have rooms big enough to host him. And everybody who comes says, they want to host him. I mean, we were sitting in the United Nations today with Gilad Ardan, and I said, the ambassador to the UN, and we said, we got to take him, Yale, forget Yale, we got to go to Columbia, we got to go to Harvard, we got to go to NYU. And he says, I got a job to do. I said, okay, well, we're going to need more people like you. Who are they? Let's make a list. Let's put them out there on the campuses. And they'll say Columbia's all anti-Semitic. Oh, we can't take them to Columbia. Really? Columbia's anti-Semitic? Great. So we'll deal with the anti-Semitism. There's ways to go in and do programs. I know we have professors here from Columbia. We have professors from NYU. It'll never happen. Listen, they told us it would never happen in New Haven, my friends. There's ways to do it. We're smart. We're smart. We're smart. And we're smarter. And we're getting smarter. So was that a note for me to stop talking? I'll stop. Thank you. Here's the mic. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Simcha. Oh, okay. So thank David Schechtman for having this tonight. Thanking Simcha Rothman for coming from Israel, leaving his wife, five children for a week to be here to just help us, arm us. And we should all stay in touch with each other and bounce ideas and facts and data off each other and continue to do more and more programming to help the Jewish people in the land of Israel, in the state of Israel, Jews around the world, and frankly, those that seek freedom and real freedom, not some naive delusion that the world has to get over. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you very much.